It's time, it's finally time. Bendy in Dead by Daylight, as of right now, might actually happen sooner than I ever thought. And I could not be more excited. This is an idea that I've had for quite a while now. I've been going in and out of editing it, tweaking it, fully redoing it at some points. And for my last video on this, which is, hold on, how long was that ago now? And here I was about to say that it was just a month ago. That video still feels so recent to me. I cannot believe that it's 3 months ago. But as I said in that video, I was gonna do a follow-up with perks and add-ons and all that jazz. And that's what I have today. A complete, full realization of Bendy, what his power would be, his skins that would come out along with, his coming into the fog, add-ons, and then I actually have Audrey as the survivor. I know people want Henry, but I'm going to go with Audrey as the main survivor. And then, as you'll see later on in the video, Henry as a legendary skin for Audrey. But yeah, that's what this video is, so I guess let's just get started. I don't have this written down anywhere, but as far as it goes for how Bendy and Audrey would get brought into the fog, I think it would be cool where it would be at the end of Dark Revival, spoilers, when Bendy is like offering a hand to Audrey when her legs are torn off. I think it would be cool if like the entity just somehow crept into the machine and took them then, and then like healed Audrey's legs, and then, kept Bendy a monster. I feel like that works pretty well. Then it would also make sense for some of the other skins, why, like, when they would be taken as well. But yeah, that's as far as like an overview goes, I think. So, short section, let's just get into the power. Bendy would be a, 4.4 killer with a 36 meter terror radius and either tall or average height. I'm gonna more or less just summarize a lot of what's on screen. You can pause and read if you want, but just to give you like a basic idea, his main power, even though it's the Alt power button, like control for keyboard, is essentially what he does in Dark Revival, his mechanic, where if you don't hide, you become fully exposed, which is just a version of exposed that does the exact same thing, but you can't, like, use Vigil or anything like that to get rid of it faster. I would also say that upon adding this effect to the game, I would really appreciate it if they would go back and give it to Ghostface, so then his power is also buffed along with this. So if you don't hide in a locker, then you get marked. And then there's also the ink blobs, which are just a little, basically like unknown UVX kind of thing, where if you get hit by it, you get infected with an ink state, and if you get 3 ink states, you get injured, and then 5 ink states, you go down, which, it's basically like Trickster's knives, but ink instead of the slash marks or whatever you call them. But it's that similar idea, where the most recent one takes a little bit to disappear, and then after that, the rest of them follow. And then finally, we have the ink wells, which are basically Springtrap's doors, honestly. They're like Springtrap's doors, but mixed with Jason's scrap piles, where they're the only way to refresh your ink blobs, so you have to pass by one to pick it up. But they can be disabled by survivors, and they can be re-enabled by you. So in a way, I think that balances itself. And the valve that spawns with the inkwell would just spawn on the front of it, so you can just turn the valve to deactivate it as a survivor, and then when you come by as Bendy, you just tear it off. So yeah, that's the gist of it. If you watched my last video on this idea, and you're wondering where the searchers went, yeah, they're gone. They were essentially just Nemesis zombies, so I figured I shouldn't probably just convolute the power more, and just stick with what makes a power good or fun, in my opinion. And just adding all that on top of it wouldn't really add too much to the substance, I don't think. So I removed them. So for the add-ons, I'm just going to kind of go rapid fire through them all. I've got them all listed out, so I'm just going to go from common to uncommon to rare to very rare to visceral. So here we go. Starting with Jack's hat, which remains largely unchanged, which now just increases the respawn time for the well valves after tearing them off to reactivate the ink wells by 8 seconds. Next is the Spotlight Helmet, which increases the weight and speed of the ink blob by 15%. The Extra Thick Ink, which increases the blob's hindered effect by 2%. And the Torn Off Door, which makes it so searching a locker will reveal survivors within 16 meters for 3 seconds if they have at least one ink state. You may notice if you've watched the last video, some of these seem very similar, and that's because they were just slight changes to the idea as a whole, so some slight changes had to be made to these add-ons. So, you may recognize quite a few familiar faces, if you will. But I assure you, most of them have been changed. So if you haven't watched the first video, then that won't affect your viewing of this one at all. Because this video is just a complete and whole idea of what Bendy would look like, along with Audrey, in DBD. So you don't need to watch the first one. It's okay. Now onto the uncommon add-ons. We have the Ritual Candles, which increases the duration of the fully exposed and oblivious effects given from the dark puddles by 5 seconds. The Bacon Soup, which increases the duration of the haste granted by the dark puddles by 3 seconds. The Film Reel, which grants 4% haste for 10 seconds after traveling through an inkwell. The Valve Core, which increases the speed at which you travel through inkwells by 15%. And the Bendy Cutout, which means that survivors with at least one ink state are given blindness until they are no longer affected with that ink state, and up to 16 seconds after it goes away. Next up are the rare add-ons, with Wally's Wrench, which increases the entity's progression speed when a survivor is hooked by 9% while the Dark Puddles is active. Bendy Doll. You gain Killer Instinct on survivors that deactivate inkwells for 4 seconds, and that survivor is made oblivious for 15 seconds. Music Record. Survivors that are affected by at least one ink state have their auras revealed to you for 4 seconds when they perform any rushed action. The Illusion of Living. When a survivor gains an ink state, they become exhausted for 7 seconds. And the Butcher Gang poster. During the Dark Puddles' effects, all survivors are hindered by 5%. This effect remains for 16 seconds after the effect is over, if at least one survivor is caught by the Dark Puddles. Alright, now we're getting to the juicy ones, the very rare or purple add-ons. First up we have the Gent Pipe, which is one of 2 add-ons that have a similar effect. With this add-on, Scorch Hooks are also considered Gent Hooks. If there are no Scorch Hooks, then 4 random hooks will be assigned as Gent Hooks. While a survivor is hooked on a Gent Hook, survivors repair generators and open exit gates 10% slower. Additionally, when a survivor is unhooked from a Gent Hook, the rescuer becomes exposed for 3 seconds. The Seeing Tool, which, once the Dark Puddles' countdown is finished, gain Killer Instinct on unaffected survivors for 1.5 seconds. The Worn Axe, which means that breaking pallets and breakable doors, or breakable walls, allow your basic attacks to inflict 1 ink state. This effect lingers for 15 seconds after the break action. Finally, the Beating Heart, which for every time a survivor gains an ink state, you gain Killer Instinct on all survivors that do not have at least 1 ink state for 2 seconds. You have your aura revealed to all survivors that don't have at least 1 ink state for 2 seconds, and gain bonus blood points for all ink state related activities. Now the Iridescent or Visceral add-ons. First up, the Iridescent End Reel, which, once the exit gates are powered, meaning all the generators are completed, following effects occur. Ink states take 1.5 seconds longer to start dissipating. All inkwells become permanently active. You can no longer use the Dark Puddles, but instead the ink blob that you throw gains a larger area of effect, and increases the maximum number of ink blobs by 2. And last but not least is Sammy's Mask. This is the other add-on that does the Gent Hook thing, but this time, when a survivor is hooked on a Gent Hook, the haste and endurance effects granted after being unhooked last 5 seconds less, and then additionally, when a survivor is sacrificed on a Gent Hook, all inkwells are reactivated and cannot be deactivated for 70 seconds. Now onto the perks. First up we have Scorch Hook Dark Revival. Every time you hook a survivor on a Scorch Hook, while there is at least 1 generator remaining, you gain a token. Once all generators are completed, all hex totems that you had that were cleansed during the trial are reignited, and the exit gates are blocked for 5 seconds per token. And then once the exit gates are no longer being blocked by any means, then the auras of your hex totems are visible to all survivors from 8 meters further. And that also means that if they weren't visible to begin with, then they become visible from 8 meters. Next is Hex Artist's Block. When a survivor is sacrificed on a hook or killed, and there's a dull or rekindled totem available with no hex totem for this perk currently active, then this hex is applied to it. When a survivor escapes a chase from after being injured, gain a token. Lose a token whenever a survivor enters a dying state while in a chase. When a survivor stops cleansing any totem, all generators, totems, or execute switches are blocked for 18 seconds, and that adds 2 seconds for each token. Looking at it again now, I can see that this has the potential to be very, very busted, so I'm gonna just put in a little fix now. I'm gonna say lose all tokens when you make a survivor go into the dying state in a chase. And finally, we have all smiles. When survivors look at you for 2 seconds, like just overall, earn a token, and then this perk goes on cooldown for 8 seconds. Tokens are maxed out at 9. At maximum tokens, when a survivor looks at you, they scream, and their scream damages generators within 40 meters, dealing 10% immediate regression, or damage. Affected generators that, get hit by the scream regress at 115% of normal regression speed. And then this the scream damaging thing consumes 3 tokens. And now we have the skins. I'm just gonna let this go by. I'm not really gonna talk for this section because I didn't do any concept art or anything like that. I just kind of slapped in images with text and ideas, and so yeah, I'm just gonna let you read that, stop and pause and whatnot. And now moving on to Audrey with her perks. First up is Naivete with failing a skill check increases your repair speed by 7% for 6 seconds. Then we have Make Believe. When you rescue a survivor from the hook, Make Believe gains a token. While the exit gates are powered, you see the auras of Scorch hooks. If there are none, then 4 random hooks will be selected as Fool's hooks, and you see those auras instead. And you can hold interacts on an empty Scourge or Fool's hook when a survivor is hooked to manifest the furthest hooked survivor onto your hook, and then take them off that way. And that takes 15 seconds, with each token moving 1 second. And then using this perk triggers a loud noise sound effect thing, reveals your aura for 7 seconds, and you become permanently injured and broken after doing it. And lastly is an invocation, Dreams Come True. I made some slight tweaks to how the invocation itself works, but the point is, once it's complete and then less than or only 1 generator remains, the following effects apply. Crawling survivors recover 10% faster. All survivors unhook and heal survivors 5% faster. Once the exit gates are powered, all survivors gain 2% haste for 7 seconds, so kind of like adrenaline, but you don't get healed or anything. And you automatically enter the injured state, broken for the rest of the trial. Regular invocation stuff. Now on to Audrey's outfits. And that pretty much wraps that up. As far as a map goes, I think to me it would make the most sense for them to reuse Trickster's Illusion, but maybe apply like the bendy lighting filter over it so it's like the inky city, you know, and then do some detailing and stuff like that to make it look more like the bendy stuff. It would be really cool to have like a workshop, but I think the Ink City works more as a DVD map because we don't really want another indoor map, and like everything with the workshop and the ink machine and stuff like that is all indoors. So I think just the Ink City would work best. But yeah, that's pretty much the idea. Um, I would appreciate anyone who wants to like leave what they think about the idea, what they think Bendy should be in their eyes, I suppose. Like if you have any suggestions, any wants or desires for Bendy to be in the game, I would like to hear it because I know that there are plenty of ideas for how Bendy could be put into the fog. I haven't looked into many of the others myself, but if you have any that I should check out, let me know. I think that's about it, actually. Uh, like, comment, subscribe. See you in the next one. Probably.